Thank you, and thank you for coming. And tonight we will welcome Chad Bishop as our speaker tonight.
If it doesn't work, that's fine. We'll survive. Oh, there we go. Good evening. My name is Chad Bishop. I live at 7405 South Valencia Drive here in Sioux Falls, and I represent myself. First, a correction. I got RUPAR'd. If you're unfamiliar with this term, it means a video was clipped in such a way as to remove context, enough so as to fundamentally change the meaning. For example, the Find People hoax is probably one of the most successful pieces of propaganda ever executed, and it was a RUPAR. In fact, it was so successful that our current president cites it as the core of his origin story for choosing to run again. And I quote, "And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I'd ever seen in my lifetime." That piece of propaganda convinced 50% of the country a sitting president called neo-Nazis and white supremacists fine people, and that anyone who supported him was overtly racist. Distract and divide, but I digress. In my case, Dr. Walensky of the CDC, when talking of 75% of people who succumbed to COVID-19 having 4 or more comorbidities, was speaking specifically about the vaccinated deaths. When advocating for removing processed food from school lunches, I had misunderstood this point. Per the CDC, the reality is, for 6% of deaths, COVID-19 was the only cause mentioned. For deaths with conditions or causes in addition to COVID-19, on average, there were 2.9 additional conditions or causes per death. My apologies. As always, I continue to reserve the right to be wrong in public. In the spirit of diffusing an artificial political and social tension, I am once again asking for you to consider acknowledging staff and students with COVID-19 recovered status in your policies, to reimburse your employees and staff for SARS-CoV-2 antibody and adaptive T-cell response assays so that they may learn their immune status, and lastly, to work with the state legislature to procure funding from the $974.5 million currently in the Treasury for COVID-19 relief. Speaking of propaganda, what do we make of the leaking of Dr. Fauci's emails showing him seeking to smear and discredit Harvard's Martin Kulldorff, Oxford's Sunetra Gupta, and Stanford's Jay Bhattacharya as signatories of the Great Barrington Declaration in opposition to the policy of blanket pandemic lockdowns, calling them, quote, fringe epidemiologists. Again, Harvard, Oxford, Stanford, fringe for proposing risk analysis and focus protection, a policy for which CDC's Dr. Walensky has recently expressed support. I didn't get RUPAR'd on that one. Time has proven them more correct than not by far. What should we make of the report by Reuters citing the CDC's January 19th MMWR report, which states, importantly, infection-derived protection was greater after the highly transmissible Delta variant became predominant, coinciding with early declining and vaccine-induced immunity in many persons. Now, even I feel a bit dishonest talking about this report in this way because I understand these statements are in terms of relative risk reduction as opposed to absolute risk reduction. If a person starts out with a risk here, if they're vaccinated, their risk becomes here. If a person starts out with a risk here, and they have recovered status, their risk becomes here. That is absolute risk reduction from here to here. The difference between the two is relative risk reduction, and this is the game that they play. The point is made in the Lancet article entitled COVID-19 Vaccine Efficacy and Effectiveness, the elephant not in the room, where they attempt to explain why this is done in vaccine studies. Quote, ARRs tend to be ignored, absolute risk reduction, because they give a much less impressive effect size than RRRs. Do we have any evidence of this in our own state? Last Tuesday morning, the South Dakota House Health and Human Services Committee heard testimony from the Department of Health. In responding to questions, the state epidemiologist, Dr. Clayton, informed the legislators that the number of reinfection cases had risen to 4,000. Dr. Clayton also reported that 18 of those individuals sadly died after reinfection. The doctor did not speak to the demographics of either the reinfected or the deceased. The Department of Health COVID-19 dashboard last Tuesday reported 174,029 recovered cases. That would mean the updated reinfection rate for South Dakota is approximately 2.3% over 22 months. Since the first case in our state, it would mean that our mortality rate among the reinfected approximately is 0.01% across all demographics in our state over that same period of time. 2.3% over 22 months, which includes the time where the vaccine-induced immunity is purported to be more efficacious. For comparison, the editor of the Rapid City Journal tweeted this table stating it was too important not to share. It contains a summary of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths for the not fully vaccinated, but conveniently omits the fully vaccinated. My nature being what it is and my distaste for propaganda by omission, I responded to the following, asking the Department of Health representative to confirm the two columns on the right. If I don't get an answer directly, multiple legislators are following up. The 2.3% reinfection rates over 22 months compared to a 14.6% breakthrough case rate May 1st to the present. Thank you.
Thank you.